All right, and so we're veering into the religion territory.
Oh, okay, cool. One of my favorite
People
topics.
people are Christian, you're atheist,
Hmm.
people are this, people are that. People in California and in America, they're spiritual. What do you think people who are spiritual are full of shit? Or do you think that it's valid?
No, I think what's happening is there's 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 a revelation happening in the mind of a spiritual person, right? And I'm speaking from as someone that used to be self-labeled as spiritual. And what happens is being spiritual is like atheism light. Okay,
Yeah.
you're not ready to cross over. So what's happening is, there's a religious people that will say like, I believe in whatever Bible or text that we're given, because you're given your religion. It's not something you're born into. It's from your parents or whomever, right? Um, and then you try to live some sort of tangential life to whatever faith you believe in. Whether you're hardcore about it or just sort of like lukewarm on it, but you're doing it. You're doing it, and that's your religious people. What happens with the spiritual people is that they at some point started asking too many questions, started opening their eyes a little too wide to what's going on in their respective churches, and realize that even though they may be comfortable in this situation, comfortable in this religion, um, believe in some of the tenets or what have you, they're noticing there's some inconsistencies, right? Specifically with the human side of the religion, because there's for instance Christianity. There's Christianity with your relationship with God or Jesus, and then there's also Christianity with your relationship towards your church and the people within that church. So when I run into a spiritual person, generally speaking, they are saying that they believe in the spiritual side of the religion and like it for whatever reason, whatever comfort it gives them. But they're not so keen on going to church. They don't like the people that go to church. They're not trying to like make that so prominent in their life for one reason or another. Typically, it's because they've noticed that the people in their church ain't shit.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're full of shit. I think they're wanting to cling on to this thing, and we can go deeper into that too. But they're wanting to cling on to their religion while not being part of the more toxic human side of the religion, especially when it gets into politics and whatnot. So, I, hopefully, a spiritual person gets up the courage, like I did when I was 24, probably, um, to make the leap to full fledged atheism.
And I think that's good. Make the leap into full fledged atheism. That's a good T-shirt for your merch.
Make the leap to full fledged atheism, because it's funny, but like
Yeah.
I don't judge them because I mean I remember, like, man, religion does a doozy on you, man. Like it really wraps your brain around some concepts that are scary. And like, even I couldn't even say the word atheist for, like I said, I think I said it. I became an atheist when I was 24. I didn't say it out loud until I was probably 26, and I didn't tell my family till maybe 28. Like,
Yeah.
dude, it was hard to tell them. It was kind of like, I don't mean to minimize the situation for like gays, but like it's kind of like coming out of the closet. Like, if there's anything worse in the black community than being gay, it's like being atheist. It's like it's just not something that's accepted. It's not something that's understood. It's not understood in any race, but
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, black in general, it's like it's a really bad word. And so it was just like hard to come to grips and build that courage, because it's like, oh shit, I'm an atheist. Like, if I say that, am I going to hell now? Like, you're already wrestling with these concepts that you're supposedly not even believing in anymore, but you're still in the back of your head like, shit, once I say this, like, God's going to hate me. And it's like, well, you're not supposed to believe in God, so what are you scared? This is a lot goes on with that.
Yeah, that's Yeah, that's really interesting because for at least with my background, I came from like both my parents come from the, you know, my dad comes from a really like college oriented family where they're kind of Catholic, but they more read books and are skeptics and things like that, and don't express a view.
Hmm.
And my mom's family is a traditional religious family, but my mom got away from it, and it didn't really. My mama is an atheist basically,
She
but you
said
know
that.
can't, like she does. She's like she thinks religion is evil now that she's got older.
Oh, well, that makes her an anti-theist.
Yeah. So what's interesting is if I express like a religious view, I get blowback the same way you might have got blowback from from saying something about atheism. Like it's really interesting, you know, that sometimes this is just a random brain fart, but it's like even with thoughts, philosophical thoughts, the grass is greener on the other side sometimes. Like you have a negative experience with one group of people and it's enough to send you into the other camp completely.
Yeah. Did she
um
tell you what happened with her, or you've always known her to be anti-theist?
Not always. You know, I think she was just a more cultural, you know, her cultural background. You know,
Spiritual.
well, no, because she's Eastern European, and everybody, it's like everybody's religious there. It's
Ah,
like, you know, so it's like you don't even question it, and so now she feels like, you know, she can be herself, which is cool.
okay.
Um, which is, you know, it's interesting seeing that move. I don't have like a final thought on it, but it's
Well,
just
I do kind of want to add something to that. Cultural religion. So one of the things that allowed me to even become atheist is that I moved out of Missouri pretty
yeah,
young. I was 18 when I moved out of my house, basically for good. And going to college, like people underestimate the college experience. Like if you listen to a lot of, especially conservatives who are like anti college and whatever, it's not about just going and getting a major in something. It's also about just getting the fuck out of your own element and just like experiencing new people, new personalities, new thoughts, and adding to them, getting receiving some of yourself, and just being challenged. So, had I stayed in Missouri, I could see myself, continuously going to church, never questioning anything. Even though I actually already was prior to leaving, but like maybe it would have been tamped down
yeah,
before I left. But yeah, being out on my own and being pulled out of that picture, so to speak, so I can see the frame, um, if that's the right way to say it. Yeah, it allowed me to go, oh, wait a second. Like when I'm not being peppered 24/7 with like religious propaganda, like I'm able to sit back and actually think about this stuff. And that's what a lot of things.
yeah. That's you know, and I know, you know, what's interesting about Missouri, and we'll be talking about our Chiefs pretty soon here, is that the older you get there, you run out of options in life.
Oh,
There's not that much going on in Kansas City, unless, you know, you're into the Royals and the Chiefs, and you know. And I noticed a lot of people who stick around there, even though they're really smart, interesting people, um, start developing really bad personal problems in life, where they have problems with alcoholism or drug addiction, or
oh,
um, where it's like you stay in one place and you can live for cheap, you can own a house, you can do this, you can do that, but there's a weird, like, people are kind of like, I feel like sometimes maybe this is controversial, but it's good to leave home to get away from those things, because otherwise sometimes you get stuck in the mud and it's not beneficial to you. And a
oh,
lot of people can make it work and have really good lives just staying in their hometown, but you know, I know a lot of like more creative people who tried to do it and they got fucked up, you know, because
oh,
there was just like they ran out of options, it wasn't interesting, and you're kind of surrounded by you know, kind of negative stuff. Like if you're in I don't know, it's like it's the heartland isn't always a positive place to be. Even though you
Yeah.
can get a cheap house um, there.
Well,
Uh,
I wish everyone had the opportunity to just leave.
yeah,
You can always come back, but there's a lot of people there. There's people that I've met who have never left their home state, and I don't mean like lived anywhere, which is a separate step. I mean like some people have never even like vacationed, you know,
oh yeah,
in a different time zone, right? So I was like, man, you got to get out. There's so much out there that if you the more worldly you are, the harder it is for the media to like take control of your mind and lie to you about what the world is like, right? Like if you've
yeah,
seen it yourself, you're not going to be reliant on MSNBC or Fox News to like tell you what it's like. You know it already. People are always like, "Oh yeah, crime in Chicago." It's like, dude, I lived in Chicago for 6 years. I think you lived there for a minute too, right?
I grew up there. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So it's like every place has crime, but if you ask someone who's never been, they think it's basically, the Gaza Strip. It's just like crime and despots. It's just like no, no, no. It's actually really dope. It's super cool out there. Yeah, of course there's crime, but it's also amazing. Same with like Los
yeah.
Angeles. It's amazing out here.
Well, what you're looking at too is like we live in LA now. Chicago and LA, New York are mega cities that where there's many cities within the city.
Hmm.
And there is a lot of fucking problems in on the far south, far west, far east side of Chicago, where there is like people, uh, though those parts of town have been so neglected for so long, like there is like there are two economies in that city.
Yeah,
So when you see like extreme violence, sometimes it comes up to the white part of town, but a lot of times it's just in these like kind of collapsed neighborhoods like Gary, Indiana, or like Lawndale, and the city keeps. But it was worse before.
hmm,
It was always worse before because you had a lot of people in that city who had, they were living there with no way to make money and nowhere to go, just siloed in the, like it's like where, like black people could move up to Chicago from the South and be safe and be away from what they were coming from. But there, you know, it wasn't the infrastructure wasn't there to metabolize all those people. And so you had for a long time people were able to work in the steel mills and make money. And I don't know if those were union jobs. I assume they might have been. There
I
was,
imagine.
yeah, there was industrial jobs, and so people were able to be middle class, especially in Gary. And then deindustrialization happened, which I think leads to really collapsed, fucked up conditions in some areas of Chicago. But the thing is, when the right wing, or when Tim Pool complains about Chicago or something, he thinks he's going to go to Marshall Fields downtown and someone's going to punch him in the back of the head and call him a cracker, you know, which is stupid. But yeah,
Definitely snatch off that beanie. That's the last thing
I
he wants.
I would do it, but yeah, so it's just, it's like you got to see there are problems everywhere, but it's kind of how that gets addressed. And now one thing I think, um, you know, um, gosh, this is veering wildly into politics. It's like
Always does.
the Democrats, their heart is always in the right place with helping people, but when you have big situations in Chicago where there's a lot of money available, but is it being used properly? That kind of thing. That's a valid conversation, I guess. But
Hmm.
it's also just like Trump's not going to help the situation. The Republicans aren't going to help the situation. They're just going to hire more cops. Um, oh wait, the Democrats will just hire more cops too in a lot of places. But
Yeah, I was going to say
you know,
I don't know if their heart's always in the right place, but the rhetoric typically is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's debatable, but it's just like they know the script.
Yeah.
They know what values you're supposed to have as a Democrat. um, and that includes like ostensibly helping people out in big cities. So
Right. Right.
um, and like me personally, I think that like there just need to be jobs for people. There need to be an economy. I think like I'm not an economist, but like the fact that China does all our manufacturing is so fucked up to me. When there's like, and people are investing in self-driving cars, self-driving trucks. It's
Yeah.
like Jesus Christ. Like like there's always going to be social problems in every group. Fucking, if there aren't any jobs, if men aren't eating, there's going to be fucking crime
Mm.
no matter what.
Yeah. But that's why they're always like, well, instead of bringing the jobs back, because the reason why it's in China, the manufacturing is in China, because some capitalist is making an extra buck off not paying for some Americans, health insurance or whatever, pension fund or whatever it is they're trying to skirt, um, by moving their labor over. So instead of rewinding that and ending, or not ending, but significantly lowering crime by giving people well-paying jobs. The other response is, well, we'll keep this wealthy guy, extremely wealthy, and we'll just build more prisons and get more cops and just lock up any poor person that acts out from being basically forgotten and shat on by the country. That's the second solution we can do. Pick one, whichever is good for you.
Yeah, and that in itself, I mean, I think that like, are we even looking at this country in the correct way sometimes? Like when I look at our penal system, it's it's so fucking crazy. Like it's so vast. I feel like it's designed to break communities and to consolidate power. You're putting all these men away, and it needs reform. It's completely insane and unethical to the point where it's like I feel like if you zoomed out from where we are in time as Americans and looked at us a little bit objectively, it's like concentration camps. It's bad. You don't have like mass deaths of typhus and crematories, but it's just this warehousing of people
Mm-hmm.
that both Democrats and Republicans, they're protecting that system. And I know
Yeah.
you're aware of that, you know, but it's like, sometimes you look at the big picture and you're like, there's not, this isn't like the, you can't even look at the ideals in a, it's just like, you look at the ideals and you just laugh. You're like, this is fucking insane, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and, I was watching a now I'm on a tangent here and I'm breaking my structure and we'll get to football. But I was watching a video yesterday that was basically a chronological history, map based. I've got really into maps as an adult.
Okay.
Um, a
As one
map
does.
yeah, like a YouTube video that broke down all of the wars between white people and Indians from the beginning of British colonialism in America to basically around the Louisiana Purchase with
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Jackson. And what it's like kind of the stuff that we assume that we know is it seems like, oh, there were a few Indians and eventually they were told to move and we moved them. I mean, but this was like decades of full-blown genocidal war in which the goal of it was to push populations of people completely over the Mississippi River, where it was like treaties would be made, tribes would be the Americans would ally with the tribes, the British, the French, everybody would be allies, everybody would fight each other together. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, in a mass movement, similar to what Hitler wanted to do in World War II, pushing these mass populations of people over a geographic line.
Yeah.
That's so fucking dark. And it's not. and it's not unusual. It's reality. But it's just like sometimes you sit back and you're like, that's it's so ugly,
Yeah.
and that was all to make, and then it's just like, yeah, and of course the slave trade, and of course all this other stuff, and it's like Jesus Christ, and all
Mm.
these people who are like, talking about maintaining this system.
Yeah.
Why?
It's just
Like
good. Well,
yeah,
it's sociopathic. It's like, well, it hasn't affected me poorly, so why not?
yeah. It's completely indefensible.
Yeah.
It's like basically like taking this ghoulish. It's like looking at the when you look at the past and you look at what all these people did. It's like looking at a haunted house, and it's like, okay, so the first person we have to respect is Roosevelt and Kennedy, and you know what I mean. It's like it's just like, yeah, this is, there is no victory within a system that is built on this shit,
Yeah.
you know. And
There's
so I
no.
think that's the truth of full-blown communism, I guess, where it's just like at some point the actual people need to, you know need to do something.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said though, is not being Americans we're unable to see, most of us at least, just how like horrific we are, and it kind of goes back to what I said about religion. Whereas like I had to move out of Missouri to allow myself to look at this from a distance, and kind of observe it from the outside. And it's almost like the same way I had to move out of Missouri to see religion for what it was. If more Americans were able to like visit other countries to see how America is by comparison, like one of the big stories that came out of the Olympics was how American athletes were, they get injured out there doing their events, and they were going to hospitals for free. And it was like, oh yeah, I like sprained my ankle or whatever, or broke something or what have you. One of the big time, I can't remember her name, but I think she was a track star. She was like, yeah, I went and got like a pap smear, and it was 100% free. It was amazing. And it's like all these people coming out
Yeah,
from Europe are like, what are we doing over here? Like, why is it not the same over here? And that's the thing you need, becoming more worldly. Like, I feel like a lot of, if all these anti Medicare for all people, because they're so afraid of like communism or socialism, if they saw it in action in a European country, they would go, oh, well, it's like the exact same in Europe
right.
that it is here, except for these people have actual health care and they're not going into debt over untimely sickness. Like, that makes all the sense in the world. And also, this communism hasn't turned into some fascist dictatorship.
Yeah. And also too, like there's such a huge difference between radical communism and just a competent government that provides some services.
Of course. But if you watch mainstream media, they're not going to explain that difference to you. And that's what I mean. If you don't know the difference, they can tell you what radical means and who's radical, and you're not going to be none the wiser because you've never seen anything outside of your homeland, your home state.
Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree. Um, one thing. Anyway,